He actually is in he actually is in Auschwitz these days. But what I'm going to do today is we're going to have these sessions in a loving Torah. I was contemplating maybe doing the prophet of the week, but if you could chime in and let me know whether you prefer that I do that, we could do that. But I wanted to continue doing some snippets from the book I've been working on. I hope it'll come out soon, called Loving Torah, which we've discussed in the past. It's a 5-volume, in a certain sense, it's a thematic, but it's a commentary on the Torah. And I think you all have a lot to do with it because it's a product of classes that I've given. And as I've always said, I receive more than I give in these classes. So I don't know how to work screens, and it may be difficult for me to find someone who can help out, timing difference and all of that. But what I'd like to do today without the screen, and maybe this will be even better just facing everyone, is I want to go back to the story of Bereshit, and I want to share an idea. So the formula will be not so much looking at text, but an idea from the portion of the week. This is now last week's portion, Bereshit. And I'll share the idea and then we'll open it up for discussion. And if we have time, we'll move to a second thought. So the text that we'll be studying won't require reading long sentences. And the feedback I've gotten is that on the screen, when that gets up anyway, it's hard to read. And it's, for me, it's much preferable that at least, even though we're on Zoom, we're facing each other. The Bereshit, of course, begins with the creation story. I think it was Frank Borman. I think he was the astronaut who circled the moon, or was it Jim Collins? I don't remember, but it was the first time America was circling the moon. And there were some people who were upset about this because of separation of church and state issues. And he's flying on taxpayer money. And people were wondering, what would he say? What would he read? And if you remember, he actually read Genesis chapter 1, which is a magnificent, magnificent presentation of the creation of the world. And I don't believe that the Torah is meant, or the creation story is meant to be a precise discussion of historically how the world came into being, although it is fascinating that in chapter 1 of Bereshit, the movement is from the less complex to the most complex and most sophisticated. So it begins with the inanimate, the creation of heavens and the earth, and then it moves on to vegetation, the grass and the desha and the aseb, and then it moves on to marine life and animal life, and then it moves on to human life. So the human being is created last. Most foundational to the most sophisticated. I remember Rabbi Aaron Soloveitchik making that point and saying, and don't forget, if that's the movement, Eve was created after Adam. And so he tried to argue that Eve, woman, is even innately superior to men. But I think he used that for a whole bunch of apologetics, which is for another time. But the first thing that is created is, the Torah says as follows. It says, Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. Ve'haaretz hayta tohu vavohu v'choshech al pnei tehom. V'ruach Elokim rachevet al pnei hamayim. There's darkness. And in sentence 3 of chapter 1, if you happen to have a Bible, Vayomer Elokim, and God said, Yehi or, let there be light. Vayehi or, and there was light. Now, I want to say something about this, because this is somewhat problematic. The truth of the matter is that in the Torah, the sun and the moon, the luminaries, the great luminaries for the earth, were created on the fourth day. And yet the Torah is saying that on the first day, Yehi or, let there be light. What is that? How was there a light before the sun and the moon? Setting aside that a day quite possibly is not a day, it could have very, very well have been a stage of creation, maybe a day. I think this was part of wasn't this part of the William Jennings Bryan and that trial where they wanted to teach the scientific theory of evolution, Darwin's theory, in schools.
Yes.
And I think part of the pushback was, wait a minute, the sun and the moon were created on the fourth day, which means, even if you look at it literally, the 24-hour day comes into existence on what the Bible calls the fourth day, which means anything before that, the day may have been more than 24 hours. Maybe it was 25 hours. Maybe it was, once it's more than 24 hours, maybe it's 1,000,000 years. Maybe it's 1,000,000,000 years. Who knows? Who knows what it is? And they went back and forth, of course, on this issue. But I exactly how do the commentaries, how does Jewish tradition, how does Jewish teaching, how does it approach this creation of Vayome Elokim Yehi Or, and God says, let there be light. And so what I want to posit for you, and I'd love to get your reaction, is that the creation story, as I've already mentioned, is not a scientific, it's not a precise scientific story. That's not the idea of the Torah in general. The Torah is a unique style of teaching, and it tries to teach truths that relate to the human condition. In the end, the Torah was not given in a vacuum. The Torah is given to human beings. It's given to the Jewish people, and more broadly, we know that the Torah is the basis for the beliefs of many faith communities. The Torah's message is not only a particularistic message, but it's a very universal message as well. It teaches lessons about the human condition. That's why the Torah is called the Eitz Chaim. It's called a tree of life, Eitz Chaim. When you look at a Torah scroll, those handles, they're called the Atzei Chaim. They're sort of like the tree of life holding the parchment upon which is, of course, written the words of the Torah. And I've always wondered, the Torah is a brilliant work. It's a brilliant work. You know, my sister Tova, whom I've often spoken to you about, she is a brilliant author and a brilliant feminist author. She's not that well known, although in writing circles, she is, I must say, she is considered a genius. I'm very proud of that. Whatever little I know about writing, it's my sister who has helped me out. And she's really a brilliant writer. And just recently, I've been doing the Daf Yomi, the folio, the page of Talmud every day. First time in my life I've done it. I never did it before. And Tova recently told me she's doing the Daf Yomi. I said, Tova, you're doing the Daf Yomi? Really? And she said, well, you know, I've read just about everything. I want to see what the Daf Yomi has to offer. And we have the most wonderful conversations talking about the Daf Yomi. And the Talmud is brilliant. Any way you cut it, it's a brilliant treatise of many, many, many volumes. And the Torah is brilliant. It's a brilliant book. But my main message is, it's not just a book. If it were a book, just a book, a genius book, then listen, we know that in the Garden of Eden, there were two trees, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge. Let's call the Torah a tree of knowledge. What are we calling it? A tree of life. Let's call it the Eitz Hadat. For those familiar with the synagogue ritual, when we return the Torah to the ark, what do? We sing Eitz Chaim He. We don't say Eitz Hadat He. We do not call the Torah a book of knowledge, even though it is a brilliant work. You can agree with it, disagree with it. It's a brilliant work. And what comes from it, the Talmud, is a brilliant work. And so one would have thought, call it the book of knowledge. No, it's not only a book of ideas, of thoughts, but it's thoughts related to people. It's an Eitz Chaim He. Recently, and here in Efrat, there's a wedding to take place, and the grandfather of the bride who flew in, it's Ilana's next door neighbor, as they're waiting for the wedding to take place tomorrow night, he lost his sister. And they're devastated because can he go to the wedding? Can the grandchildren, can the granddaughter have her grandfather at her wedding? After all, the grandfather is now sitting Shiva for his sister right here. Ilana went with Toby to make a Shiva call. Can she? Can he? And they asked me to look at it. And I went over there and listening to the close relationship, he was saying that there are many rabbis whom they consulted who said, you can't break Shiva, you can't go. And I had a very different reaction based on the book. The book is not only the book relates to people. So I said to Jim, I said to Jim's family, I said, I think the grandfather can go to the chuppah. I think he can go. Avoid the music, but go to the chuppah. Can he receive a blessing? Absolutely. He can even receive a blessing. And then he comes in when the bride and groom, when they're under the chuppah, he says the blessing. And then after the glass is broken and there's music and dancing, and I said maybe he could step out. And then the family said, but then he'll go home. I said, no, wait a minute. I think he could stay for the first dance and just dance with the bride. And maybe I'm going to suggest when the bride comes out with the groom, he should come out and the music could stop. And everybody knows the songs. Everyone will sing. It'll be a little different. It'll be a little beautiful. And I think it's doable. And so they said to me, well, what do you base yourself on? And I said, well, there are, I cited sources, including the most encyclopedic source on mourning, which is the Kolbo al Avelut. And I said, it's doable. It can be done. And then I explained this idea that it's an Eitz Chaim, it's a book of life. And I would go so far as to say that when we train our rabbis, they have to know the book as best as they can, and we're always learning. But listening and understanding people is even, I would say, if I had to choose what's more important, that's more important. And in this case, I think it's critical for the grandfather to be there with the limitations that I've offered. So they said, but there are rabbis who are much more strict. And I responded and said, I think I'm being very strict. I'm being strict on the issue of a grandfather's relationship to a grandson. And then I said to them, look, I don't want to override any other rabbi. And they said they've spoken to other rabbis, and many said no. And then they said they spoke to the chief rabbi of Efrat, who's a dear friend, Rabbi Shlomo Riskin. And I said, well, what did Rabbi Riskin say? He's a soul brother. And I'm happy to tell you, they told me he said exactly what I have just shared with you. The Torah is an Eitz Chaim. It's not a monolithic set of rules. In olden days, when a woman came to the rabbi with a chicken, not sure if the chicken is kosher, so if the person who brought in the chicken was a more established, wealthy person, the rabbi would look at the questionable chicken and throw it out and say, listen, you can get another chicken. But if a woman who was poor would go into the rabbi with a questionable chicken, the rabbi would do somersaults to find a way to say yes. Every page of the Talmud has more than one opinion. It has two opinions. Yeah, it's like, Arnie, it's like the goalposts of a football game. As long as you get the ball between the goalposts, you can't be outside. You're not going to get your points. But even if you hit it like that fellow who kicked the 66-yard field goal, the longest ever, it hit the crossbar, but it went over. It went over. And the truth of the matter is, koach de'tera adif. Anyone can say no. The real goal is at times to understand the consequences of a decision and at times to say yes. And the Torah is a book of life. And that story of creation is a book of life. And so I want to tell you the way the rabbis look at this first creation of God. This is what the rabbis say. The first lesson being taught about the human condition is the following. There was darkness everywhere. There was despair everywhere. Now notice, they're taking it out of the darkness. They're taking it out of the scientific arena. Darkness now is someone feels down, despondent, somebody has failed, somebody has fallen. Darkness. And the first message of the Torah is the following. The tree of life message is, God says to the darkness, let there be light. And the Torah says, Vayehi or, and there was light. That's the first message. Whatever the darkness, God has the power to push away the darkness by saying light. The light, if you will, dispersed the darkness. Now, let me take it one step further. One of the most, I'm going to take comments in a moment or two, Tova, just for a moment. One of the deepest challenges and mandates of the Torah is called V'halachta bidrachav imitati odei. And so it's based on the sentence that God is a God of mercy, Hashem Hashem kel rachum. And the rabbis say, as God is merciful, we should learn from God. We too should be merciful. As God is kind, we should be kind. After all, we're all created in the image of God, something we've discussed in the past. And so I'd like to argue as following, that just as God, as in the first act of creation, said to darkness, let there be light, and the light dispersed the darkness, so too the human being created in the image of God, whatever the darkness we face, we, in a godlike way, have the koach. God gives us the inner strength to say to the darkness, Yehi or, let there be light. As it says, I believe it's in the book of Mishlei, Proverbs, Nafalta, you fell down, takum, stand up. You fall down, you stand up. Recently, I heard someone speak about the movie Gone with the Wind, and Gone with the Wind much better than I do. I don't know the whole story. I Googled it. It was so confusing. I know it's based on a story. I don't know if even it's true, at the end of the Civil War, and it's like one of these soaps. I mean, it's like, my mother used to watch Search for Tomorrow. I always called it Search for Yesterday, Search for Tomorrow. It is so complicated, but apparently the last scene is there's a woman who, I may have it wrong, but it's something like she's making a play, and there are so many suitors in this story. Everybody is sleeping with everybody. Everybody is going after everybody. But in the last scene, she's reaching out to someone or other, and this is a very famous line apparently, that she's begging this man, come with me, stay with me, or let me stay with you. I don't know the exact narrative, and she says, because if you're going to let me be, what's going to happen with me? I'm going to be lost. Everything will be gone. And his last line was, he looks at her and he says, frankly, I don't give a damn. Frankly, I don't give a damn. But I actually heard an Israeli rabbi on Shabbat talk about this, Rabbi Golan. Apparently, when this movie was redone in a different setting, it had a different last line that's not as well known. Frankly, I don't give a damn is very well known. But apparently it had a different last line. And the last line was, I think it's within this context, where he rejects her and she's devastated. And somehow, at least in that second run of the movie, she very emotionally finds the inner strength to say these words. She says, tomorrow is another day. I like that. Tomorrow is another day. So which is it? Do I look at life and say, frankly, I don't give a damn? Or is it a message of, and then she's lost? Or can I still be hopeful? Can I still be hopeful? As the book of Proverbs said, as I just mentioned, nafalta, you fell, takum, you should stand up. Yeah, I'm into living every day a full day, but I like the song Tomorrow, 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 and that's the first message of the Torah. It's a fabulous, powerful message. It's the Torah. It's not a scientific presentation of creation, although in broad sweeps, it fits into, I think, the scientific mold. That's not the purpose of Torah. It's not a science book. It's a book of in-depth knowledge. I believe its base, it comes from God, and ultimately we participate in the process, in the oral tradition. But it's a story of that combines sophisticated learning and teaching with the human condition. That's the key thing. And maybe the first message of Genesis is, as God said to darkness, let there be light, so too do we. And I'm looking out, and we've been through a lot together. And there's been darkness. It's built into life. But the key is, tomorrow's another day. It's not simple to get there. I'm not saying it's simple, but tomorrow is another day. Let there be light. So I want to stop here and get your thoughts, and because I've spoken for a long time. Tova and then Fern, please.
Yeah. Avi, this time when I read Bereshit, I thought of things that I hadn't thought of before. And one of them is when God says, let there be light in the darkness. And he says, and this is day and this is night. He names them. That's the only thing he names, is night and day. And I think our lesson is the importance of, we can't go on with life until the Vayehi Erev, Vayehi Boker. We have preparation, and then we have rest, Erev, and then we have action. We have Yom. And to me, this time when I read Bereshit, That's what I learned.
I think that's a beautiful thought. Beautiful, Tova. I want to add that the Jewish day, unlike the universal day, which ends at night,
Yeah.
our day begins at night but ends with the day. That's the movement. It's
However,
movement from.
however, to prepare for the day, we have the hachana, which is very important. Then we have
Yes,
erev. Then we have the day.
yes, yes. Thank you, Tova, as usual. Fern, any thoughts?
It reminds me a little bit in a strange sort of way. You gave a lesson last year, just before Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, about you always have to have dreams. Because without the dreams are what keeps us going for the reality. Because reality, a lot of times, is not good, but the dreams is the little bit of light that shines through that keeps us going.
I appreciate it when somebody remembers something I said. I especially appreciate it. Thank you so much, Fern. Anyone else have any
Rabbi?
thoughts?
Rabbi,
Yes.
it's Jessica. Rabbi?
Oh, Jessica, how are you?
I'm okay, thank you.
Good.
Our Torah, we call our Torah an Eitz Chaim. Tree grows, it blossoms, and it changes.
Beautiful. Yes. Yes.
Robert?
So
Yes,
it's not a
please.
it's not a stagnant thing.
Right. I love that. That's a great contribution. It's life means it has a rigor. It has an energy. It's, as you just said now, it's not static. Anyone else?
Yes,
Like
Ravi?
life. Also, Rabbi,
Yes.
we have Bereshit bara. It's translated as in the beginning. I would translate it if anybody asked me. Bereshit means when. In the beginning, God created the heaven and earth, comma, the earth was tohu bohu.
Right.
When in the beginning.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you.
Ravi, this is Bert.
Yes. Yes, Bert.
Torah, they say, is Ora as well. So maybe since we have always said midrashically that the Torah was created before the world, so God then just started to reveal the Torah, and that is the light that we need to use to help guide us and to make our life better.
I love that. First of all, the sound Torah, it's actually the Torah, that it really comes, the word Torah comes from the word yoro, which means to teach. The tuf in a verb puts it into the future tense, tuf, nun, yud. But Torah is like or, and that's why, Bert, there are many schools. I mentioned Rabbi Riskin, his conglomerate of schools is called Or Torah. When you read the writings of Rabbi Kook, the word or is always found in his writings. And because the Torah is the light, there is a real association between the two. So, Bert, thank you. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Carol, do you have any thoughts on this? I saw you smiling when we were talking about Gone with the Wind.
Just a few disconnected thoughts. Something, they say to shine a light on something is the truth, emet. So to some extent, when they say let there be light, could also have the meaning of let the truth, honesty come through.
Right.
And the other thing was that when you spoke about the book of life versus a book of knowledge, knowledge has a kind of a fixed thing,
Yeah.
And when you say a book of life evolves, and changes. So when you approach it from that way, then it's more, I think, flexibility in terms of interpretation.
Absolutely. Precisely because it's a knowledge related to people, there has to be a flexibility. I mean, it's not a moral relativism where anything goes. There are parameters, but there is a significant amount of latitude. Jewish law is not a system of physics and chemistry. It's not the old time Coke machine where you put in a dime and your glass of your paper cup of Coke comes out. That's not life, and that's not the way, in my opinion, Jewish law functions. And that's why we created rabbinical schools, because I really thought that we were moving away from that rabbis, especially rabbis who don't have enough contact with people, they're in the academic settings, they're brilliant, but if you don't have contact with people, I think something's remiss in the way one approaches the Torah. Ruby, please.
Okay, when they say let there be light, I think of both negative and positive, because when I'm dreaming, and sometimes I'm aware I'm dreaming because I have to suddenly get up, whatever, my dreams always have both the positive and negative aspects. I think it's rare that it's just one or the other. So I think just life has to have both, and maybe that's what we've got to be aware of.
Right. So you're broadening out light.
Yeah, it has to have both.
Uh-huh. Right. I appreciate that. Howard, Carol as in Howard as in Carol. Any thoughts on this?
You mean Carolyn?
Carolyn, okay.
I'm Carol, she's Carolyn.
Okay, I'm going to remember that. Howard, what do you think?
I always looked at the Torat. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. You have a very loud voice. Your voice is going across the Atlantic and the Mediterranean.
I've always looked at the Torah as a book of knowledge. And it's a book of knowledge that is always evolving according to interpretations at different stages of one's life. The more you read it, the more you get thought from it.
Right.
The more it helps you to live a better life. And that to me is life also.
Yeah, that's the goal. Thank you. And you should be well, Howard.
Thank you.
Feel well with Carolyn for many years to come. So I was going to stop here.
May I offer?
They're dragging me out. Judy, yes? I'm sorry?
Yes. Just, you know how I like to pay attention to words and the makeup of the letters.
Yeah,
well,
I love that.
Torah, with the word Torah, with some poetic license, it can be a composite of tough, which is the last letter, meaning the whole Torah, the whole everything. Ora, that's the poetic license. The Torah is full of light.
Beautiful. I'll share one more thought and we'll stop. Just a brief thought. That was in the first chapter. In the second chapter of the Torah, it talks about the Garden of Eden. And there is this sentence about Adam and Eve. Vayihiyu shnehem erumim. And they were both naked. Velo yitboshashu. And they had no shame. Both naked. And they had no shame. Now, in the same framework, how does one look at the Garden of Eden story? Is this a real story? Well, Maimonides actually says it's all allegorical. The whole Garden of Eden story is allegorical. And the message of the allegory, it's teaching something or other. And one of the best sessions we ever had, because of your contributions, was we had a session, if you remember, about a year ago or 2 years ago on the Garden of Eden, which I still remember. I hope it's recorded somewhere because of what the contributions that many of you made. And the Garden of Eden story, I would look at chapter 2 as it is the blueprint of what love should be. What are the ingredients that make love work? What are the ingredients that make a marriage work? And that's Adam and Eve. That's why under the chuppah, we actually invoke the Garden of Eden and Adam and Eve. May the bride and groom be as happy. Began Eden Mikedem. May you be as happy as the Creator allowed and as Adam and Eve were happy. And so if you look at it from that perspective, and in counseling couples, I often encourage them to read the Garden of Eden story because it really does speak powerfully about love. And this sentence, I'd like to offer a different take of the sentence. Because if it means that Adam and Eve were physically naked and they were not shamed, my reaction to that is, so what? It's a big deal, but what's the big deal? That's the best you can do. I like to understand a rumim. Yes, I mean, in marriage, Judaism, unlike many of the faith communities, certainly unlike in Catholicism, the primary reason for intimacy is to have children. In Judaism, if one is so blessed, having children is pru is important. But intimacy, the primary reason for intimacy is because it's the deepest expression of love. It potentially can be the deepest expression of love. If you look into the Tur Shulchan Aruch, into the whole, there are 4 parts of the Code of Jewish Law. One deals with marriage. And the first law says husband and wife are together in intimacy because it's the mitzvah of onah. They actually, there's an encouragement of what is called the mitzvah onah with an ayin, the mitzvah of sexual pleasure. It's a lot of discussion about that in its details. I'm not taking away and from they were both naked. But I think I'd like to understand it on another level. What made Adam and Eve the teaching lesson for love is Vayihu Shneim Merumim means that the test of love is that people can be metaphysically naked before each other, emotionally naked. That's what it's about. Or from where I'm coming from, spiritually naked. It means that, all of us in life, we wear masks. It means that in a relationship with another, if it really works, I'm able to express my deepest I, who I really am. And I take off all those masks. As Toby says to me sometimes, when in discussion, she said, Rumi, take off your rabbi mask. No rabbi mask. Be who you are. And we all wear masks. That's why, by the way, in Judaism, the word for life is not in the singular. There's no singular for life. It's chayim. The truth is, we live 2 lives. There's the life on the inside, and often there's a life on the outside. And part of life, I think, is to try to integrate the 2. But often, who we are when the door is closed is a very, very different story. But what is being said here is that in a marriage that works, one can reveal their deepest selves, their strengths, their weaknesses, the positive, the vulnerabilities. I can share my deepest feelings. I think a test of love, a test of marriage is, feelings are feelings. Feelings, no one can control feelings. But it's real love when I'm not afraid to express what I feel. I'm not afraid that when I express it, that my beloved is going to judge me, is going to critique me, is going to mock me. No. Vayush nehem erumim. I just said this under the chuppah. I said this to bride and groom. I want to bless you. Legalot et ha'ani ha'amiti shelachem. I said it in Hebrew, that you should reveal the secret I within you and take off the layers of screens and masks. That's what love is. There's no one who can, it's very difficult to live alone. And there's a difference between alone and lonely. Alone, you're alone. Physically, there's no one with you. Lonely, You could be living with someone, sharing the same room with someone, and still be lonely. And the key is to take off the mask so that one doesn't know that loneliness. One can express the deepest side. Although I want to quickly add just one point, and I always tell this to bride and groom, I say to them, yes, you should express your deepest I, but sometimes you have to know the importance of silence. There are times in love you have to know when to be silent. I think that can't be the rule of the day. Ultimately, the more one is able to reveal about oneself, the more honest we can be with who we are, the deeper the love. But there are times you have to know when to be still a hate. It's the wrong place, wrong time, knowing not only what to say, but not to say. And that's what I wanted to leave with you. And it's almost 11. So if anybody has a comment, otherwise the kids are roaming around here, so I'm going to get back to them. Anybody, any thoughts on Vayushne Merumim? Estelle, I'm not going to let you go unless I hear a comment.
I, I hate to say this, but I think you've hit the nail on the head.
You hate to say this?
It's the first.
Because I'm in Israel, Estelle.
It's not that. It's that when I first
Wait,
met.
say hello to Toby. Toby just came in. Say hello to everyone. Toby. Here's the princess.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Toby.
Hi, Toby.
Hi. How's it going over there in your country? Going well here. We're like in a hotel. We have a meal served to us. We don't have to shop for food. It's quite nice. See the grandchildren. It's nice.
We were just talking about taking off masks, and I mentioned that sometimes you tell me, take off your rabbi mask.
Take off your rabbi. Now you're a husband or a father.
Right.
You do a good job both.
Well, I think I mentioned to you when Barry Gelman recently was marrying off his son. We're very close. I said, Barry, I just have one word of advice. I know you're the rabbi, but under the chuppah, don't be the rabbi, be the father. And yeah. Estelle,
Yes.
tell Toby what you just said, that I hit it on the nail. I want Toby to hear that.
You just hit the nail on the head. No, there are certain things that you don't say publicly, but sometimes you do. And I always remember that when I first met my husband, he really loved the Bible. He was very secular, and you know that, but he loved the Bible. And there were so many times when he wanted to show me all the wonderful things in it, and I couldn't care less. I couldn't, and I was not interested. And I'm sitting here and I'm listening to you, and I can't stand it. Of all the things that I was never interested in or ever thought.
Estelle, when Ben Gurion came to Israel in 1906, Ben Gurion I don't think he believed in God. He came to Israel, and why did he come to Israel? He was very knowledgeable in the Bible. He learned Tanakh. He learned the prophets. What was it? It's very similar to your description of your late wonderful husband. The Bible has something to offer. Tov, what do I always say about this class?
You love this class. You love the people. You love their comments. You love this class.
Right.
Hi, Tova.
Hi, and we
Hi,
love
Fern.
you both.
Yeah.
Yeah, look who's here, Howard and Carolyn.
Oh, yes. Hi, everybody.
Hi,
Fern is
And
on.
Oshinsky. Oh, yeah. Hi.
And the Oshinskys.
Up.
And
I don't know that.
And Robert always has a different scene now.
Yeah. Some of them are very funny. Yeah.
Scene in Lakewood that he's
that's not a real scene. That's a make-believe scene.
But he's buying this house in Lakewood.
Oh, looks nice.
And Ellen.
We're closing on Friday.
Hi, Ellen.
Yeah, and Arnie's on, Arnie Kramer. It's really nice. Arnie sometimes doesn't show himself. Yeah, Elaine's on.
Hi, Elaine.
Tennis partner.
Tennis, anybody?
Yeah, Arnie's
and Arnie
on.
Kramer, hi.
And now Ezra's on, so.
Very nice.
Ruth is on. Mark's on.
Toby.
Hi. No, it's a nice class.
Karen Jordan is on, Vignon Fresra,
Hi,
and
Ezra.
Myrna. So
Hi,
good.
Rabbi
We're going to
Toby.
sign off now, and God
Thank you,
willing, next
Rabbi.
week.
Thank you,
So
He
Rabbi.
loves this class.
just
Yeah.
love all of you. Please take care of yourselves.
Have a good week.
Good
Have a
week.
good
Thank
Shabbat
you.
shalom.
Thank you
God
for
bless
today.
you. And
Enjoy the
Chodesh
grandchildren.
Tov. Tonight and tomorrow's Rosh Chodesh. Love you.
We'll begin my class at 11:15 as it was scheduled, so everyone could take a little break, and I'll see you at 11:15. I'm gonna take a little break also. Thanks all for being here, and I'll see you all in a few minutes.
Are you there, Ellen?
Yeah,
see
I'm
you.
here.
You know what really gets me is that every once in a while he really reaches me. And I wish he wouldn't call on me because I was not intending to say anything. So he just at the end he has to, which
Well,
I find very discouraging.
this is why I've always loved his class and loved to buy it, frankly, because there's a tolerance that and a belief system that I don't find most other places. Although I must say I did love his interpretation of Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of cute.
I
Someday
thought-
he should read it.
Or at least watch the movie.
Yeah, I know. It's sort of
But-
funny.
I mean, it's hard to imagine anybody who at this point doesn't know that movie or the book.
Well, you know.
I know there are more important things to study, but
I don't know. I think it's a pretty important book.
I loved it. I mean, I
So did
remember
I.
reading it when I was a teenager.
So did
I
I.
thought, try finding anyone under 40 who's ever even heard of it.
Really?
Really?
Yeah,
You
that's
really
what I
think
was
so?
thinking, that a new
Oh,
generation
God.
is not reading it.
It's also in the woke culture. It's a banned book.
You know, I'm so tired of people trying to rewrite history.
Yeah,
I mean, history is history. You learn from it. But to rewrite it, no more Columbus
Yeah.
Day, no more statue of Teddy Roosevelt in front of the Museum of Natural History. I can't stand it. I just, it's, I don't know. I don't
That's
know.
really strange. I don't even think of the fact that young people don't read that anymore.
they
Or
don't read,
Well,
they don't read Mark Twain's books anymore. And Huck Finn's book, the book Huck Finn, is also
course,
considered
of
I
course.
mean, I used to insist that we teach that in 11th grade American Lit.
you know, now they're actually talking about banning, or maybe they already have banned To Kill a Mockingbird from school curriculums.
Huh?
They want, well, that was when one of the banned books, you know.
Well,
books
yeah,
banned in
so
Boston.
was Huck Finn, but those were banned by conservative.
Banned
no.
in Boston, wasn't that the
No.
expression?
Those were banned because they're racist. They were
Oh,
Now.
God.
by the
And
woke
people shouldn't
culture.
read things. You know, it's very interesting. The books that were written in the 1920s, I have occasion to have read these many times when they're getting rid of library books. You never find them in libraries anymore. But those books were so racist and so anti everything that it's important to read. It's important to know. I mean, are we going to getting rid of Shakespeare? Are we getting rid of Dickens? It's important to know these things. Are we living in an idealized world? I mean, if you don't know the past, what is it Santayana said? If you don't know the past, you're going to relive it.
You're doomed to repeat it.
Repeat it. I don't
I
know. I find
think
people
it's a
today
disgrace.
very, very narrow-minded and I don't know. It's crazy. That's why I like George Will. Sorry.
I used to love when George Will and Charles Krauthammer.
Oh God, yes, Ani.
Yeah.
That's so great. But I was telling Ellen earlier that I saw he's just written a new book, and I was on the weekend. I listened to Book TV, and he was on, and it was so wonderful that I really am going to. People. There are certain people who have minds and thoughts and are intelligent, and there are so few of them today. I don't know. I'll include Avi Weiss as one of the few.
Yeah.
Beautiful man. Have you guys been getting the email that I sent?
Yes, I got it.
I hope that they're not, a pain in the neck to you to get.
No,
on.
I love it.
Ani.
I don't always look at it, but I love it.
The stuff of Altalena is not new, of course, as you know, to me, since my husband was there.
Right. He was at
And
the
that was-
Altalena?
Yeah.
He was there?
Altalena.
Oh my
Of course he
God.
was. He was there.
Was he on the boat?
No,
He was on the shore?
he was he was helping to unload the guns.
Wow.
And that's what almost destroyed him, as a matter of fact. The whole mess. And I remember when he told me that he was with Begin when Begin said to made the speech, "Don't shoot back," and he was devastated. So it was so I'm looking at that picture, and I'm looking at all the other things that I learned from him at that time. It's funny when people look at it, the next generation, and I look at it, from a different point of view. So it's sort of interesting.
Yeah. And I like the fact that Mayor Soloveitchik was able to
He's a fan. He's a real Begin fan.
yeah.
Oh well.
But you also cast it in the larger light that it deserves.
That's true. It's true. Yeah. So it's I don't know.
Hello, Dr. Rubin.
Yes, hi, how are you? I'm calling from Dr. Rubin's office confirming for Thursday.
What?
Hi, everyone. I'm teaching
Hi.
from shul.
Oh,
Hi.
Oh, Ezra. Yeah, no. It's great to see you all.
Where are you?
I'm in my office in shul. I have a nice little shelf here with random books, which I sometimes use. Some windows. There's a drum in my office.
Ezra, I did not get the link today. The only way I got in was through your link yesterday. And when I called Ellen, she forwarded it to me. How come I didn't get it at all?
Okay, here's what happened, I think, is that I emailed it. I sent the email last night, and they usually schedule us to send at 5:30 in the morning. But last night it went out at 12:30 in the morning. So it might be there, just a little bit buried behind some other emails, Estelle. Like usually it's probably at the top because it's one of the most recent things. But here it came in the middle of the night. So it might be
Well,
there.
I don't want to go out of my current thing. So when we're finished, I'll go check.
Yeah. So I think that's probably what happened. Because we usually like it to come, early in the morning, but there was a glitch and it sent at the wrong time. Okay, so first of all, it's good to see you all. I know Bev and Ted aren't able to join today, but some of our other regulars, I'm not sure where they are, but that's okay. And they'll either come on or they won't. But I wanted to go back into Sefer Daniel. I had a few sources I wanted to show you. We're in chapter 6. Oh, we're still recording. I'm gonna pause. I guess we could. You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna stop